All right, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here with us. My name is Roseanne Santos. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement at John Jay College. I've been with the college about 9 years now, and I really love working with the college's alumni. They are such a wonderful, dynamic group of people who you will be part of at some point. So you'll have your time where I'll be calling you and stalking you on LinkedIn, asking you to be a speaker or a panelist. So remember my face and my name because I will be coming your way after you graduate. This evening, we have a really, really great conversation for you. Those of you who have some interest in working in the NYPD, whether as a police officer, a 911 dispatcher, traffic, tech jobs, there are many opportunities, civilian and non-civilian, within the NYPD, and I've been fortunate to have been introduced to tonight's guest. Her name is Gloricel Lee, and she's an NYPD recruiter. This is what she does on a day-to-day, or a part of what she does on a day-to-day, and she's gonna give you some really important insights into the NYPD exam, how to get positions, the websites, the documents, basically everything you need to know if you want to be a police officer or if you want to apply for different types of work within the NYPD. So with that said, and before I do that, I do want to introduce you to my colleague, Megan Cerezo. If you could wave, Megan. Megan is going to help on the back end. So if you have any kind of technical issues, if you can just send her a private chat and she'll help you while the conversation continues. But outside of that, I have some set questions for Gloricel. And then after that, we're going to open the floor up. So start thinking about your questions and anything that maybe she didn't get to that you want answered. You can put them in the chat and I will keep track of them and share them with her. So once again, thank you for being here with us this evening. And with that, welcome, Gloricel. Well, let's just get started. Tell us who you are and what you do specifically at the NYPD.
Hi, good evening, everyone. First, thank you, Roseanne, for inviting me to this. This is actually a little bit easier than speaking to a large group of people, but still nervous. So I am a captain in the New York City Police Department. I've been with the department for a little over 16 years. Like Roseanne said, I am a recruiter. I'm the commanding officer of the recruitment section. But a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I didn't always want to be, I didn't dream of becoming a police officer. I actually wanted to be an accountant. And as a teenager, I met a few officers. I used to work with children, and a few of the parents were officers, and they told me about the job and how fun it was and the camaraderie. And I was still like, eh. Then when I was in college, they told me about the Cadet Corps program, which is strictly for college students. They pay you an hourly wage. They give you money for tuition. And I said, that sold, I'm in. And as a CUNY student and not really getting much financial aid, I said, this is the best thing for me to do. And that's what opened up my world to the police department. I met some very awesome people in all my assignments. And even when I wasn't 100% sure of whether this is what I wanted to do, they convinced me this was great. And I've never regretted my decision. I became an officer at 22 years old. Like I said, I've been here for 16 years and I wanted to do accounting. And guess what? Once I came on this job, those skills came into use because there's so many different things for anyone to do on this job. And I remember sitting behind a computer and doing Excel sheets, and I'm like, I became a cop. I didn't want to do accounting anymore, but it was still good. I think I figured out what my niche is in this job, and it happened to be a lot of administrative stuff. But I've also gotten to work out in the street, and as a cop, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, and definitely as a captain. But now
so you're currently a captain?
Yes.
Okay.
And so it could take people anywhere between 10 to 15 years, even 20 years to get to the rank of captain. You have to take civil service exams and pass them, and then wait for your turn. And then here you are, you get to wear the white shirt.
So let's just get right to it. What kind of jobs are available and what characteristics are needed to be good candidates or to be considered good candidates?
So, I always say the police department is almost like the private sector. You can find absolutely anything to do in this department. It's not just being a police officer, a 911 operator, school safety, or anything of that. Right now, we're actually hiring in our IT division or IT bureau, where I saw earlier today they were looking for paralegals, paralegal assistants, but they have nurses here, people, accountants. I had a cop that was an accountant and they took her to go do budgeting for another big division. You can do anything, whether as a civilian, like you said earlier, and get hired under that title, whether it's accountant or a legal expert, a lawyer, or you can become a police officer and they can still use you for those skills, but you still retain your title and your benefits as a police officer, which I think I would suggest going the route of police officer. You could climb up the ranks. You have a great pension program. And right now, if you get hired, you can retire after 22 years with half your pension. So it's not a bad thing. Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
All right. So now we talked a little bit about, we were talking about 15 minutes before we got started, and you're doing a very big recruitment push for the exam. Can you talk to everyone about what that looks like, how they can take the test, what that means?
So right now, we didn't offer an exam in 2020 because everything that was going on. The last one was in 2019. So this year, we are opening up an exam. The filing, which means you have to apply online, is in April, from April 7th to 27th. And the actual written exam starts on June 15th. So once you apply online, which is on nyc.gov, or you could visit nypdrecruit.com, and it'll direct you to the page. You can get all the information you need, or requirements or things you should have ready. There, it's usually on our page. Once you go on there, you apply again in April, and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services will mail you a postcard telling you where and when to take your exam.
Can you repeat the websites and we can put it in the chat?
Sure, nypdrecruit.com.
Okay. And
So that'll direct you to our page, and there will be a link. Once the registration opens up, there will be a link, and it'll direct you to the DCAS website, and you can apply there. You have to make an account, and you have to remember your password, because that was my problem. I always forgot it, but that account will always be yours. So even once you become a police officer and you want to take a sergeant's exam, you got to sign up in that same website.
Okay. Great. And so just to get this straight, just to summarize, the recruitment that's happening right now is to get people to apply. The application window is April
7th through the 27th.
So that's just to apply. That's not to take the test.
That's to apply to take the test.
Okay.
So you apply,
Got
you
it.
go online, you
So
apply to take the test.
the bureaucracy just never ends, right? So you have to apply to be invited to take the test, essentially. And the test won't happen till June. Now, is that going to be an online test?
I believe so. So Department of Administrative, I'm going to call it DCAS, but it's the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. They have centers. They have one center in each borough. And now everything is on a computer. So they'll call you in, and I believe they're obviously practicing social distancing. So it's going to be very little people at a time. And you'll take the test on a computer there. You actually get your grade once you complete the exam.
Now, can you tell us any of the logistics, like how old do you have to be?
Absolutely.
Once you take the test, what are the next steps? Is there anything else? Like, are there any health conditions you won't accept? We also talked about what documents you had to have ready. So give us the dirt, spill the tea, tell us what to do if we want to be an NYPD.
Okay, so if you want to be an officer, in order to take the test, you have to be 17 and a half to 35. You can't take it a day over 35 years old or under 17 and a half. once you apply and you take the exam, you still cannot get hired until you reach your 21st birthday. So
Interesting.
yes, because it usually takes about 8 months to 12 months for the exam to be released, meaning you take your test, 15,000 people could take it. A list has to come out with all the passers. That won't be established until almost a year after you took the exam. So that means you won't hear from the NYPD for about a year max. And once you pass and you hear from us, that's when we'll call you in to do your initial medical and do some intake forms. And when you take your medical, they usually ask you to bring in medical records. Let's say you ever broke a bone in your life, meaning you can be 35 years old and you broke your bone when you were 5, you need medical records for that. They do. And that's something that usually holds people up, because they're just like, where am I supposed to get this? I was 10 years old, or I was 5 and I don't remember. They're very strict with that. But any kind of medical conditions, they want records for that from your doctor.
So essentially, this is not for the procrastinator.
No.
People need to be once you apply, once you take that test, you need to start putting a little folder on your computer or having an actual physical folder, start requesting these documents, because it's going to, especially with the pandemic, it's not like you could just walk into DMV. You can't just walk into Social Security. You can't just walk into your pediatrician's office from 20 years ago, if it's even still there. So you guys have to kind of dig deep into your time management and planning skills and really think long and hard about how to prepare. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from you, right?
Yeah, so it's not like that was the medical portion of it. Anything you list on your intake paperwork, like they're going to ask if you've ever gotten any moving violations. And if you say yes, they're going to want a court disposition from the, I think is the Traffic Violations Bureau. So wherever it is that you fought for, to guilty or not guilty, you have to get a note, not just saying that you paid, but an actual disposition from the court. And you mentioned Social Security. I believe it's a Social Security verification. You have to go, but I just read online that it's only good for 30 days. But I know people have been having a very hard time getting that because of COVID. There's a backlog, but they need that in order to hire you. And go ahead.
What if you live out of state or out of the boroughs and you want to apply to NYPD? So sometimes we have students who commute in from New Jersey or from Rockland or from Westchester. Do they have to go through something different?
No, they go through the same thing. And if they live further out than New Jersey, because we do hire people that have to move, you have to live in the city or the surrounding counties. Surrounding meaning Long Island or upstate, Westchester, Rockland, Orange, or Putnam. They give you 30 days after you were hired to move into those counties. Wow. So if you live in New Jersey and you still weren't able to find an apartment, you have some time to get a New York City address or a New York address. Sorry.
Okay. So I have someone who sent me a message here. Took the exam. Yeah, took the exam and passed it. This person sent it to me privately. Took the exam, passed it, received the email with information on next steps, but did not have the school credits. Trying to acquire them now. What are the next steps? That's very nuanced, right? That's very specific.
Oh, but it happens all the time because you could take it, like I said, as young as 17 and a half. Okay. So there is a unit that sent you that email. You can just email them back and let them know that you do not have your credits yet. And what they do is put you on hold. Exams, usually from the time the list comes out. So remember I said it takes about a year for the list to come out. From the time that list comes out, the lifespan of an exam is usually 4 years. Things are different now because of COVID. So they extended a lot of the exams a year or two. But for the most part, it's 4 years. And unless you were deployed in the military or you have some like special circumstances, they usually stick to the 4-year rule. Because I saw someone ask about the 320 or 0320 exam, and that was the exam that was given in 2019.
Okay.
I believe the list was just established last month, and they've already started contacting people for that exam.
Right, because you
So
said
once
there's
you
an
get that
academy
email,
coming up.
yes.
Okay.
Well, we have an academy next week. There's a class of about 300 getting hired. And right now, tentatively, we have a class for April. And I'm hearing it's another very large number.
Okay. And so the people who take the exam in June, when more or less would their academy be if they're called?
So let's give it a full year, even though I kind of think that they're gonna release those scores earlier than a year because we need more officers.
Okay.
So let's say they wait all the way till next June of 2022. They might get us hired as early as December of that year. I know this 320 class, because they were established last year, the people on the top of that list, that means the highest scorers and whoever was able to get all that documentation quick, are going into this class next week or by April.
Okay.
So it can happen quick. But again, it all depends.
But it can happen quickly as long as you have your paperwork in order. I just
Yes.
want to keep stressing that because I think sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to wait for NYPD to send me my next set of instructions. But in the meantime, you can be proactive and start getting all your stuff together so that when they do send,
Yes.
when they send you that email, you're ready. You're ready to send it all in, right? So
Yeah.
somebody is asking the PCT test. I don't know what that means.
Okay, so PCT, they're the 911 operators. They
Ah.
are communication technicians. I am not sure if they had a test prior to COVID. I know that an exam was canceled because of COVID. So right now, we need 911 operators are one of the most important jobs that we have, right? And we keep hiring them. The older ones are leaving, and we need more and more. So you can go online to I think it's nyc.gov/jobs, and you make an account and you go on this database called eHire, and that's where you search for those civilian jobs. So for PCT right now, we're hiring provisionally. That means that we're hiring and it's kind of temporary until the actual civil service exam it comes out for that title. So we can hire you now. You have to have a cover letter and a resume. You upload it onto eHire on that website. And they'll call you in and you'll start the process here. And it's kind of similar to a police officer, but not as hard. It's a lot harder to become a police officer. They have less requirements, whereas a police officer, you need 60 credits with a 2.0. I believe you don't need that many credits to become a PCT or a 911 operator. And once you get hired, the police academy is just a training. You go to the police academy for a few weeks and then you get your job. And the good thing about the PCT program, whether you take the next PCT exam and then you're hired permanently, or you can keep that, you have to take the exam in order to keep that job. But once you become a PCT permanently, you can take a promotional exam to become a police officer.
Oh, interesting.
So you take a different exam than everyone else. And you have a day seniority over everybody else that you got hired with, which
So
comes
it's
in handy
almost
for
like
vacation kids.
so it's
Like a cadet.
it could be a stepping stone, right?
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. And what is there a passing rate for the PCT exam?
For the oh no, I had it for the for the PO exam.
And what is the PO exam passing rate?
Passing rate, as in how
What do you
many
have to have to pass?
Oh,
Yeah.
you have to have, I believe it's a 70 percentile, but there's only about 80 questions. So you do the math.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in my head.
That's okay. I think they know what they have to get, and you know that doesn't mean that there won't be a bunch of people who get 100, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think we're trying to do some tutoring sessions for John Jay. Once the filing period is over, then we're going to get into our whole tutoring session. Yeah. So we'll have them special for John Jay. And then we're going to have a few other in person at the Old Police Academy on East 20th, and a few other locations in the city.
That's amazing. So as soon as you have that flyer, that information, if you send it to me, I'll make sure that everyone on this list gets it. And then we'll also post it to our social media. So I got a question here about how can you prepare for the NYPD test? How do you find materials? Like, can you go to the library and find study aids? Um, do you get your call based on the score, meaning high score? So the department will call you ahead. How does the ranking work?
So one study, you can find books in the library. They do have study guides. We have one on our website on nypdrecruit.com. And if you come to our tutoring sessions, we will also give material. We have officers that write the test. All of us go through it. We all have to take it and pass it and make sure that it's good. And when we do the tutoring, we do go through each portion of the exam. You have to memorize a few things to answer a few questions. There's a little bit of math, reading comprehension. So, but like I said, there is one on our website, and we're trying to put more up before
Okay.
the next exam.
We're getting a
And
bunch. Oh, no, go ahead, Gloricel, please.
no, what was the next thing you asked me?
Um,
Any-
how they rate, how you get ranked, like how do you get a phone call? Is it based on the score? Is it based on
It is,
a full package of your application? How does that work?
so they call you based on your score. So when I say you apply online, you're only doing a regular application, like filling in the captions. You have to pay a fee to DCAS. And once you take the test, they do go by score. So the people that scored the highest will get called in first.
Does everyone who apply get to take the test?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's good.
Yes.
I'm getting a lot of questions about the Cadet Corps. Last year's was canceled due to COVID. Do you know if they're gonna resume that? Is the CAS5, is that the same thing?
CAS 5, that is a form that you usually have to fill out when you start your hiring process.
So all
So
of
when
that
we
was
call them,
canceled, right, due to
so
COVID.
yes, the Cadet Corps classes were canceled. I actually spoke to someone today from the police academy, and we have nothing yet. I
Okay.
can't even say if there's one in the future. We do not know.
What is there a website where they could keep an eye out for that?
The same, you can actually go on nypdrecruit.com, and we have a cadet portion. And as soon as we hear anything, usually with the Cadet Corps, you don't have to take an exam. You go to an orientation, and we give you the paperwork to start working on your application. And they'll ask you for like your official transcript, which you also need for it to become a police officer. They'll ask for birth certificate or any information with people that you live with. But we usually put it on our website and our social media.
And so what about the people from 2020 who were put on hold? Are they first in line if the cadet program starts again?
They might be police officers already.
Not based
So
on some of these questions. Somebody says they were put on hold because it was canceled.
it depends on when the Cadet Corps program starts up again. So, to be a cadet, it's a small window. You have to be enrolled in a 4-year school, and you have to have 45 credits minimum. And I believe it's 95 credits max. So if you're over that threshold of 95 credits, you won't get hired as a cadet. They'll actually tell you to wait it out and apply to be a police officer.
Okay. So the questions do not
Oh,
stop,
go
which I
ahead.
love. So that makes it easier for you because you can just, with the questions. So I've got a couple of private messages. What happens if you have, I'm going to turn it into 2 questions. What happens if you have a sealed record? Can you be a police officer if something happened in your youth, or maybe you were wrongly accused and it was all taken care of or not? And then what about, and this is just me because I watch a lot of TV. What happens if you have like criminals in your family? And I'm the first to admit we have our share in my family, no shame. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
But, what does that look like? Because I think it's a real concern, this whole idea of guilty by association. And, what does that mean for those of us who want a career in law enforcement? So it's twofold. If you got into trouble, you have some kind of sealed case. And 2, if you have associations or you have family members who have been imprisoned or have been in trouble with the law?
Okay, so first, the sealed records. We can get everything and anything. So I would still be honest with that. And the only thing that would actually disqualify you from becoming an officer is if you were convicted of a felony, if you were convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor, and if you were dishonorably discharged from the military. So if you did something in your youth, as long as you are honest, or if you have any court documentation showing whatever the outcome of that was, why it was sealed, that you're going to have to bring that in.
That's great information because you don't want to be surprised down the line.
Yeah, and then
if you're
have
not
to go
eligible.
hunting for any documentation that you don't already have, but you need that. Also, criminals in our family. I would also, if they live with you, and you're gonna name them, they make you list all the people that live with you.
Okay.
You have to be honest about that because we run background checks on everyone that lives with you too. So just be honest. If it was really, really bad, we might suggest that you move away from the situation, depending on how long ago it was. There's a lot of different factors.
Sure.
It wouldn't necessarily disqualify you, but they'll offer suggestions on recommendations to do to move forward.
That's good advice. Thank you. And what about someone wants to know, are there jobs in NYPD that require a master's degree before you can get the job?
Okay. There was one listed online, which was for a director for tech development. They required a master's degree, but they also said in lieu of a master's degree, you can have a bachelor's with 18 months work experience doing something similar to that job description. It really depends on what you're going to apply for. If you're trying to go into a very high level civilian job, it may be required, yes. But not all the jobs require it.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay, that's good. Can you talk a little bit about the background check and what that means, what that looks like, how long that takes? What are they looking for?
So they're gonna give you the first day that you come in. Like I said, you do intake and you do medical. And intake, they give you a booklet to fill out. Similar to the CAS 5 too, which someone mentioned, you're filling out basic information, but they're going to ask you about your history. If you have any arrest history, moving violations, or any interactions that you've ever had with the law. And anything that might be a red flag, or pretty much if you fill out anything, if you had a moving violation, they're going to want to know about it. If you have a tattoo that might have some hate, just unfavorable tattoos, they're going to want you to go into it. So you're going to have to explain everything. But oh my goodness, I'm like going on because I'm reading the questions that are coming out.
Don't worry about the questions. I'll read them for you. Don't worry.
Okay. So in that, once you provide all that information for them, they're also going to ask you to fill out paperwork on all the schools that you've ever attended from high school on. So if you went to 2 different colleges, they're going to ask you to fill something out, and they're going to send it to your college and ask them for your record in school, whether you had a disciplinary problem or anything like that, even as far back as high school. Do they hold it all against you? High school stuff, if you got suspended for fighting? No, I got suspended for fighting and I made it. I'm here. So not everything is held against you, but they want to know, they want to see the history that you have. But they go into everything. Like I said, high school stuff, the people that live in your family, if you've ever, whether you were a victim of a crime or a perpetrator of a crime, they're going to go into that. They want to know all the jobs you've ever had, and they're going to go into that too and speak to people that from your former employment. Anything you can think of, they go speak to your neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially honesty is the best policy because they will find out.
Yes. Yeah.
We got some interesting questions here, maybe logistical questions. Do police officers always travel in pairs with a partner, or are there times when they are alone?
Well, it's been some time since I've been a police officer. I know when I put police officers out, I usually put them in pairs. There may be times where they're alone. Some traffic officers work alone, where they are just pulling cars over. It's not good practice, but this is a huge city. So I've worked in Manhattan the majority of my career, and sometimes the officers here are alone. Whereas if you go out in Queens, they might be in pairs because it's a lot more desolate.
Okay.
But
And does your major matter regarding pay? So if you have a criminal justice degree, do you get paid more?
no,
I didn't think
no,
so.
no.
Good
And
question. Good try.
yeah, I've always recommended, even though I got my degree in sociology and it was kind of different, but looking back, I wish I would have stuck with my degree in accounting, because having a different kind of degree kind of makes you special here. And they'll seek out, there's times where we could just run everyone that's in the department, and let's say we need an accountant, or like I'm in recruitment, I need a graphic artist. I need someone that's good with social media. I need a good writer. We'll check and see who has a degree in graphic art, or graphics or anything like that, animation, anything. And sometimes it'll help people get a special gig,
Okay. So here's a really
but they don't get paid more.
right, right. So here's a really interesting question. This is someone who's a licensed social worker, has her MSW or has their MSW, has an undergrad from John Jay, would love to get a job helping NYPD and first responders, but doesn't know how to go about it because the stigma is high in NYPD for mental health care. So, how do you direct NYPD hires, um, or if they offer the services through an EAP? How can this person get involved with the NYPD, maybe as a contractor, maybe hired by the NYPD as an in-house social worker? What are the different
Wow.
opportunities? What are the websites they can go to apply for these things?
So I'm not sure. I know that we hire psychologists
Okay.
for a lot of the mental health thing when people have to get evaluated. But when cops are going through something personal and they haven't reached the level where they need to see a psychologist, we have several units. Let me see, EAU, Employee Assistance Unit. And we have uniformed officers, so they're police officers, sergeants, detectives, and a lot of them do have a background in social work. So they go out and speak to officers. Let's say if there was, sometimes officers are involved in a shooting, or maybe an officer died in a precinct. Those are the people that go to those precincts and speak to everyone and make themselves available. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people reach out to them. And seek their advice, whether it's mental health, depression, financial burdens. A lot of people go to them. So, I mean, I'm a little biased because I would tell you to come become a cop and then go that route, but it's possible. We also have a lot of officers that if they're not in that unit, there's another family assistance unit where they also help officers and their families, officers that were injured critically. They offer assistance to their families. They help with funeral, like things like that. And yeah, so there's a lot of, I know of the uniformed opportunities. For a civilian, I don't think we contract outside social workers to come in. Not often. I know if they do, it's to deal with outside emotionally disturbed people. So we go out with clinicians, officers go out with clinicians to help with the homelessness and emotionally disturbed people outside.
But they don't necessarily work for the NYPD. They might be through an agency.
Contracted, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is the questions are all over, so they're not in any single category.
That's okay. I'm all over. Let's go.
What's the process for transferring to a different section of NYPD? For example, cybercrime or fraud prevention or a criminologist unit. Do you need to take a certain test to get qualified? Is it based on years of service? Are those considered promotional? How do you move around and transfer around to different opportunities?
So just like the private sector, you would apply. So a lot of the times when these units have availabilities, we have our own intranet and someone can go on, you can check which unit is hiring, or picking people up. That's what we call it, but it's pretty much hiring for their own unit. And you can apply on there and you fill out a basic application, and sometimes they ask for a resume, sometimes they don't. But something as specific as that, let's say fiscal crime, if you are into forensic accounting or anything like that, you can apply online and they'll call you in for an interview. And the pay isn't so much different, but it's not different at all, actually. But you'll be specializing in whatever that unit does. So you just have to go online whenever there's an opening and apply, and they'll call you in for an interview. A lot of times it does go by time on the job, years of service. So will they take somebody that has more time than you? No, but if you have only 2 years on, they usually want somebody with more, who's an officer a lot longer.
Okay. So I'm getting more questions about majors. Are there specific positions available for someone with a forensic psych degree? Does major matter? Let's just get it all out there, because sometimes it doesn't matter what degree you have, you can still take the test, correct?
Yeah, you just need 60 credits and a 2.0. It
Okay.
does not matter what degree you have. Like I said, once you get here, if it's something very specific and special, and they're seeking someone with that degree or that expertise, they're going to seek you. Or you can always apply to what, like I said, when you go on the intranet and you see something that sticks out and it's very specific to what you did, you can apply to it.
Yeah.
But,
and that's all nypdrecruit.com. I just want to keep reading it in case people came in late.
Oh yeah, but once you're already an officer and you're trying to apply for something as an officer, it's on our internal intranet.
Got it. Okay. Here's a really good question. What are opportunities available for international students? Can an international student even be eligible for the application or the academy?
Well, you need to have a citizenship, a U.S. citizen. You have to be a U.S. citizen to get hired. So you can start the process, meaning you could take the exam and you could start the hiring process. But before you get hired, you need to be a U.S. citizen.
Okay. All right. Some of these you already answered. You answered about the temporary 911s. That's because you have to wait for the civil service exam to be offered.
And you have to take it. Once it comes out, you have to take it and you have to pass.
Do you have any knowledge on going into federal law enforcement after your years in NYPD?
I do not. I know a few officers that have left, but they did not retire first. They left after several years here, and then they went on to work with the feds.
Okay.
So
they sought out those positions and applied.
yeah.
Okay. Would you need to be in the NYPD to do work with incarcerated or at-risk juveniles?
Incarcerated, that's not NYPD. That would be New York City Corrections. At risk, we do have youth coordination officers. We have domestic. Sometimes those at-risk juveniles fall under domestic violence. So a lot of those domestic violence officers deal with at-risk juveniles. And like I said, the youth coordination officer, which we have anywhere between 2 to 4 in every precinct in the city. So once you become an officer and you work patrol, and after a few years, anywhere between 3 to 5 years, you can apply within your own precinct to be a youth coordination officer. You express interest and you can work with them that way.
And there's also plenty of nonprofits. You don't have to be an NYPD officer to work with at-risk juveniles. There are a lot of nonprofits in urban areas in New York City where you can apply to be a caseworker, or, so it's just a matter of figuring out which ones are the agencies that support that population and then checking their websites for their career pages. So that I know for a fact. I have a lot of friends who work in that area. So, if you're in the military, do you get exempt from some of these things? For example, if you already have security clearance, do you still need a background check? Do you still have to take the test? Like, are there any
The only thing you get, you don't have to get the 60, you don't have to have the 60 college credits. If you have 2 years active service, we'll take the 2 years active service in lieu of the 60 college credit requirement.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think as a vet, when you do take the police officer exam, you get an extra half point over everyone else.
Okay. So you got someone curious about the tattoos. If you have tattoos on your hands, can your tattoos show? I mean, what?
So right now, when I first got hired, that wasn't a requirement. It wasn't prohibited. After I believe 2007, anyone that had any exposed tattoos had to cover them up. So if you had a sleeve, you had to wear long sleeves even in the summer, or you can wear a flesh colored covering on the tattoo. Same thing for the hands. I don't know how you would cover it on your hands, but you technically, if you were hired after 2007, which now we're getting to that point where almost everybody was, everybody is. So yeah, you do have to cover it.
Yeah.
But it won't stop you from getting hired.
Right. Yeah, because there's a dress code, right? There's rules around hair and what you're, all of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why my hair is always in a bun.
Okay. Are there any internships available with NYPD?
So we do have, well, last summer everything changed in 2020, but we always had a college summer internship, where we would get a few college interns to come in, and it was paid. And it was full time in the summer. And then if those interns wanted to stay in the fall, I think the rate was the same amount. I don't want to misspeak, but it was maybe anywhere between $17 to $20 an hour. But they can stay in the fall, but they can only work max 17 and a half hours a week.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do have them. And again, it's also on eHire on that web, nyc.gov/job.
Okay, thank you. I see a lot of repeated questions. I'll just say them real quick. You have to be between 17 and a half and 35 to
Take the exam.
You don't have to have any specific major, and you have to have 60 credits and a 2.0.
Yes.
So she said all of those earlier, but if you came a little later, those are some of the basic logistics that you need to know. So let's talk money. What is the starting salary? How does promotions work? How do you get pay increases every year? How does all of this work? Because we want to get.
Yes. So starting pay is $42,500 for a police officer in the academy. You get very small increments until you reach 5.5 years. By 5.5 years, you get up to $85,292 to be specific. But that doesn't count the night differential. So let's say you graduate the police academy and you're doing 4 to 12 or midnight, you get paid a little extra for doing night diff. We get an annual uniform allowance. We also get holiday pay, which they pay twice a year. So all those things aren't counted, as well as overtime, which is usually available. So you could, once you hit top pay and you're making that base of 85, you can get over 100 grand a year. Now to be a sergeant, you get, I believe you need 63 college credits to get promoted to sergeant. And the starting pay for a sergeant is just a little bit more than the top pay for a cop, but it goes up to 109 base for a year, 109,000 base for a year for top pay sergeant. And then again, that's without all those additional things.
Yeah. So you talked about some of these special skills, right? If you're an accountant and they use you as one of those things, is there extra pay for those things, for those services? Someone asked about Spanish. So are there language differentials? That's another skill set. I'm always telling people, that's a big skill set. If you speak Mandarin, and you work in an Asian community, or you speak Spanish or Arabic. Yeah.
I know we do have certified interpreters. So let's say you come in and you say you're fluent in Spanish, reading, writing, speaking. You do go through a test, but no, they don't add there's no language incentive. The only thing is if you're a certified interpreter, which is after you pass that exam, that the job offers you, you will get called if they need. If it's a language that not too many people speak and you can't find anybody that speaks that language in your precinct, you'll get called to help for certain cases.
And that could be overtime.
That could be.
Okay.
I'm not making any promises.
No, I know, but it's not necessarily, oh, you're going to get an additional bump in pay because you have this extra skill.
Yes, but it could be overtime. Yeah.
Does the exam, somebody's here saying that the Suffolk County exam was offered in Spanish?
That's interesting.
So I guess it doesn't happen at NYPD because you're like,
No, because you need to know, you need to be able to read, write, understand English to get hired. Yes.
right. Okay.
You have to remember, you take this exam and you pass. Then when you go into the police academy, it's like going back to school for 6 months. You have to study, you have to read, you have to pass exams. You get, I believe, 3 academic exams that you have to pass. They test you on our procedures, on the penal law, social sciences, and you have to pass. So you have to be able to read, write, and understand.
Yeah, great. That's important. Fundamentals.
Mhm.
Here's a good question. Any advice on the physical training? Should people be doing anything in advance of the test to prepare?
I would do some cardio, whether it's running. I never liked running. So I did stairs and I worked on a 14th floor somewhere and I took the stairs every single morning, every single time I had to go down, I took the stairs back up and that was my cardio. And eventually I was able to hold my own when I had to run. But for being a girl, I think the biggest obstacle was upper body strength. So you can start doing push-ups at home, start off on your knees if you need to, but eventually you have to build yourself up to doing full regular push-ups. And that will help you throughout the academy, but also to pass the job standard exam that you need to get in, because they make you climb a fence. You have to drag a dummy, you have to do a pull a weight machine, but it's all cardio and upper body strength.
Yeah. So basically get in the gym and start getting into shape now.
Yeah, but people don't want to be in the gym. So if you have to work out at home,
It doesn't have to be literally the gym. I mean,
yeah.
the working out
Yeah,
and the watching what you're eating and
definitely.
all of that. Okay, great. Is there a max for overtime? Like if you reach a certain amount of hours, they're like, no, you can't have it.
It varies wherever you work, really. I don't do any overtime here, but it depends on how much they need you and it. So no, I mean, I don't want to say yes. You're going to come in and do 100 hours of overtime a month. That is not the case. But if they need you to stay for anything, they're going to ask you to stay. You can't just decide, oh, I'm going to do this many hours of overtime this day just because I feel like it. It's all the needs of the department.
People are asking about tutoring sessions for JST. I don't know what that means.
So the JST is the job standard exam.
Okay.
And people do have a lot of difficulty passing it. What I believe is, I think downstairs, it's in this building where I work, but they usually offer tutoring for people that haven't passed it. And I know we're in conversations to offer tutoring to people before they actually take it. Because they let people come in, they're blindsided, and then that's it. If you go onto YouTube, I know that there was a video posted up there, but it's very old. So I'm trying to get a new video out of breaking down the JST and how to prepare you for it. And I am working on getting tutoring for people, but we're also still trying to practice social distancing. So it's kind of hard to get too many people in. But, Roseanne, as soon as that happens, you're going to be the first person I tell.
That's what I like to hear. And just keep watching the NYPDrecruit.com website. You have to do your own due diligence and make sure that you're constantly looking, checking your emails. If you signed up, right? You say you have to open an account. So all of that is important. Don't treat it like your John Jay email. I know a lot of you don't check your John Jay email. So make sure you're checking your emails. Okay, let me read this one. This is a little long. I received an email about the exam 0320 Can I start the process on the portal website, like filing the CAS-5, etc., and then put myself on hold because I'm going into the master's program at John Jay in fall 21?
Um,
Or should I just put myself on hold now and wait until I graduate the master's program to start the portal website?
I would put yourself on hold now, because if you upload any information, they're going to want updated information when you come back and start your process over. So definitely put yourself on hold
Okay,
next.
great question. If you're doing a master's program in mental health and want to be part of NYPD to do evaluations, how do you apply?
Evaluations on candidates or officers that are already on the job.
It doesn't say.
So you, I, most of our, I'm sorry, most of our evaluations are done by psychologists, by doctors. So I don't think the masters, they have to be licensed to do evaluations.
That's my understanding as well, that you have to have your PhD in psychology. A master's
Mhm.
is gonna do it.
Mhm.
Oh, here's a good question. Promotions to detective. How does that work? What does that look like?
So a typical route to that detective shield is you start off in the precinct, make a lot of arrests, be very active. We used to have an anti-crime unit, which used to be, it would lead you to the detective squad in a precinct, but we no longer have that unit. So you kind of have to seek out enforcement units. Now it could, oh my goodness, honestly, I can't even tell you which enforcement units there are there for regular cops. But once you become a police officer and once you're in a precinct, you'll see the different ways that you can get that way. And then in order to go to a detective squad, it's the same way I said with the other way, like applying on the internet. You have to apply, you have to show your work, showing that you're active, you helped solve this many cases. We also have, there's units, I know people were domestic violence officers in the past, and that's almost like you're doing a lot of working on cases with domestic violence. That's another route to get into that detective squad. Once you go to the detective squad, it's usually 18 months to 2 years to get your detective shield. Or you could also apply to narcotics, the same way I said on the NYPD intranet. You go online, and if they have an opening, you can apply. You go through a basic interview and they'll pick you up. But again, you have to show that you have that activity, and that's, you want to do that enforcement kind of work.
Yeah, this is where my expertise comes in and where my being a broken record, you have to network. When you get there, you need to network. You need to find those people who are going to help move you up, who are going to appreciate your ambition. You have to be personable. You have to build relationships. You have to learn how to read a room. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
can't be tone deaf to what's going on in the precinct, in the community. You need to find a mentor, you need to find guidance. You know, this is where it doesn't matter what industry you're in, the same rules apply.
It's, yep.
Relationship building, talking to people, you know, being pleasant and positive, those things count. People will notice those things. People want to work with people who can have that kind of high energy, the good attitudes. Right? I mean, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's true. I think that's, not that I'm like a social butterfly, but I think that's what's helped me my entire career, is just being out there and speaking to people and treating everyone the way I wanted to be treated. And then you have to have that work to back it up.
Yeah.
So you could be the kindest person in the world, but if you don't have that work ethic, they still won't take you, you know, or if they do, you're gonna not look good when you finally get that job and you're not able to do it. You want to show them, yes, I'm still able to do this job. And yes, you can go out there and speak to anyone and
Yeah.
like you said, network.
Yeah. So a lot of questions about what you have to have by the time of the exam versus by the time you get into the academy. You have to have the 60 credits, yes?
To take the exam, there's just the age requirement to
Okay,
take the exam.
got
You
it.
need to have all that other stuff, the 60 credits, the 2.0. You also need to have a valid New York State driver's license by the time you get hired. You should be working on, if you live out of state, you should be working on getting the New York address. Like I said, they only give you a specific amount of days to move into New York City or the surrounding counties. But you can work on all those things between taking the exam and getting called in or getting hired.
Okay, good, good. Thank you. The temporary employees we talked about, do they get benefits?
Yes, they do. They get everything they would have as a permanent employee.
Okay, but they still have to take the civil service exam when it comes up and pass it to keep the job.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. And you know, on our Instagram, I mean, I don't know, I know not everyone has Instagram, but on the NYPD Recruit Instagram, we post this stuff continuously. Like we have an Instagram live weekly. When the PCT position was coming up, we had it up on our Instagram. Special guests, any announcements, we usually go on Instagram first, and then we go on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Good to know. So at NYPD Recruit.
Yes.
I don't have Instagram, so go follow them.
Yeah.
You got a question here about your own career aspirations. Have you ever given any thought to leaving NYPD and joining another law enforcement agency?
No, I never thought about any other law enforcement agency. I can tell you, I guess as a rookie cop, even in the police academy, I was always kind of, I don't know if I was obnoxious, but I had said in my classroom, I'm going to be a chief one day. And I mean, I'm where I'm at now, and I'm very happy. If I don't get to that level, I'll still be very fulfilled in my job, but I'm here now and I'll go wherever this job takes me. And I've had a very fortunate career, very happy.
Awesome, awesome. There's a question here about you have to be a resident to work with NYPD. I don't know if you mean a resident of the United States or a resident of New York. You have to be a citizen to be a cop, and you don't have to live in New York to be, you don't have to live in New York City. You can apply from elsewhere, but you do have to live in the approved counties to be a police officer once you're hired.
So you can live in Long Island, and you can live in the surrounding counties upstate.
Yep. And so what I gathered from your answer about the military, they're the only folks who really have a little bit of an advantage. They get an extra half point because of their military experience, but you don't get any more or less points for not living in New York City, correct?
You know, that's a good question. I know that people used to get residency points if you lived in New York City, and I think they still do. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact answer, but I think that's still a thing. So you used to get residency points. Let me see if I could find it. I'm sorry. I wish I could be like 100% sure, but I want to say I'm like 85%.
Search, right? Yeah. All this would be on the website. There's got to be a page that tells you each and every requirement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about medical? Are there any medical issues that can prevent you from being accepted into an academy? And if you were not accepted, let's say into a cadet program because of a medical, can you try again? Does that disqualify you forever? What does that look like for folks?
Okay, so medical, there could be a number of things. I don't know too many people that were disqualified for, let's say, diabetes. But if you have a really bad chronic condition, and there's so many, so I don't want to be specific and misspeak too, because I'm not the doctors that work down there. But if you have a major health issue, it can disqualify you. But I know people that have gotten hired, again, with diabetes. I know people that got hired with asthma. They're going to ask you for paperwork from your doctor saying that you still be able to do your job, even if you have whatever medical condition it is.
Yeah. Do you have a little bit extra time? There's still a lot of questions.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I saw something about a piercing policy.
Oh, I didn't even get that far because there's so many questions. Okay. But that's okay. Go ahead and answer it. Go for it.
Yes, you cannot have, I'm not allowed to wear any of my earrings. You should not have any rings on your face. It's a policy in the police academy. You definitely cannot get away with it. So yeah. You would
Okay.
have to figure out a way to hide it.
What I'm gonna do now for the audience sake is if there were questions that have been answered more than once, I'm not going to repeat them. We will have this on our YouTube channel, on our YouTube playlist. We have an alumni relations playlist under the John Jay College YouTube site. And Megan will be sending out a thank you email to all of you, and she'll share the link for that YouTube site with you, along with our calendar of future events. So you can always go back in and watch this to get any answers. We can also share the transcript of the chat when we send your thank you email, and you can read kind of everything that has been talked about. Is there a link for the internships? You briefly talked about internships. Is there?
So yes, it was nyc.gov/jobs. Sure.
Okay.
We don't have any internship jobs now, but when we do have them, that's where they go up. I would check back in the summer.
Okay.
Check back in the summer.
What's the difference between Cadet Corps and NYPD Auxiliary?
Cadet Corps. So okay, auxiliary is voluntary, and it's based on you turn out of a certain precinct. You do training through whatever. There's one police officer that is assigned to all the auxiliary cops that are in that precinct, and that's who you report to and gives you your assignments. But they are just voluntary, and it's almost like a neighborhood watch. Let's say you do get a uniform and you get a bulletproof vest because you do go outside and do some sort of patrol. Auxiliary is our eyes and ears on the streets, but they don't do much enforcement. Now, cadets, it's almost like an internship where you have to be a college student. You, like I said, you do get paid, you get an hourly wage, and you get tuition assistance, and they normally have administrative jobs in a precinct.
Okay, thank you for
So
that.
they take the reports and stuff.
Do you get paid while you're in the academy?
Yes, you do. You get that full 42,500.
Okay.
42,500 and full benefits.
Are you allowed to have a part-time job in the academy?
That you are not. I believe that's prohibited. Yes.
Okay.
And even once you get hired, there's certain restrictions on the kind of jobs you can have and how many hours you can work on with the other job.
The credits is 60 credits minimum. You're not penalized for having more than 60, like having 90 or whatever. I mean, if you have a bachelor's degree, that's 100.
If you want to climb up the rank, you have to have 96 credits to be a lieutenant, and you have to have a bachelor's degree to be a captain.
Okay.
So it'll help you out if you want to continue climbing.
Great. How long do you have to wait after you take the exam to find out your score?
Because it's on a computer, you do find out how many you got right right away. As soon as you finish, you find out. But like I said before, the Department of Administrative Services, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services releases it about a year later. So they'll release your actual score. Let's say you have the residency points and the vet points, that'll be adjusted in that score that they give you later on. Okay. What you see the day of the test is just a raw score.
Okay. So I see a question here about scholarships, but I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Does this program give scholarships? What program? You wouldn't need a scholarship if you got into the academy. That's part of the job. You're getting paid. So if you could expand on what you mean by that, that would be helpful. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something, Larissa?
Well, the NYPD does offer scholarships. Let's say you get hired, you can get hired with less than your bachelor's degree. And if you wanted to go back to John Jay, or there's another school where they will give you a scholarship for undergrad. For a bachelor's. And then there's several other master's degrees too, master's scholarships that they offer.
So they offer scholarships for police officers who want to go back to school.
Yes.
Great. Okay. We talked a little bit about this also before we started the show. Work-life balance.
Ooh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
I am a mother of 4. I was a single mother of 1 when I first got hired. And that whole take a village thing really came into play when I came on the job, because my schedule was a little different. Where when I first got hired, when you go into the police academy, you can either do 7 a.m. to 3 or 4 to 12 midnight. And they gave me 4 to 12. And I didn't think that I can ask to change it, but you actually can if you need an accommodation because of childcare issues. You can change it. But I did the 4 to 12s and I had to rely on family members to help me watch my daughter. It's I've been able to manage. You do work 5-day work weeks, and you have your weekends just like everyone else. Sometimes your weekends rotate where they will be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday. But it's enough where people still are able to manage. And I think this generation, it's not the generation of old where people just live to work and that was it. Everyone knows now that work-life balance it's a major thing. So, you come in and you do your job, you work your 5-day work weeks. Every once in a while, when it's very busy, let's say in the summer and they have 1,000 parades going on, when things are normal, yeah, you might get called in on a couple of your days off.
Right.
But it's overtime.
Right. Okay.
But I've been able to manage, and my daughters they feel like I'm there. They say I'm there all the time, so I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, great. I'm getting some questions about if you go into NYPD, how do you transfer to another state or to become a state trooper? Are there any connections or how does that work?
I'm not sure about other states, but I have following other recruitment sites for other police departments. I do know other departments sometimes offer laterals. So you are a top paid cop here and you want to go somewhere else. Not every police department does this, but some of them will say, oh, you were already a police officer over there. You only have to come here, go to the academy for 2 weeks and get certified. And now you could do whatever. But we don't do that for other agencies.
Right.
Whoever comes here has to start from scratch.
Okay. So if you're a top cop in LA and you move to New York, you have to start all over again with that pay?
With 42.5, yes.
Okay. All right, just to be clear, but it's
Yeah.
also not NYPD's responsibility to help with the transition either. You
No,
have to apply to that other state. You have to apply to troopers. What I'm understanding is that the NYPD is just another experience on your resume. You put it on your resume and that other agency decides whether or not that's important to them. Is that correct?
Yes, and like your resume, your reputation will follow you. So think about how your work ethic and how you work here and how you interact with your supervisors, subordinates, or peers. It will follow you when you try to apply somewhere else. Don't think you could be a troublemaker here and then try to go somewhere else. And then when they call your references here, they're going to tell them exactly how you are, and that might affect that. But that's like the private sector. It's like that everywhere, right?
That's true. Your reputation in an industry follows you. That's absolutely true. We have a question here about arrest quotas. What if being within the NYPD, you do not fulfill the number of arrests needed? Is that a myth? Are there quotas? Do you get fired, demoted if you don't hit them?
No, this is not, 2000 or 1999. I'm sorry. I know it's happened a lot more recent than that, but no, you don't get demoted. You don't get fired. There aren't necessarily quotas, but there are expectations, and the expectations would be just for you to work and match the people that surround you in your precinct, because you can't expect someone that works in the financial district to do the same kind of work that someone in the South Bronx would do, or any area in Brooklyn. Some places are busier than others, so it can't be the same expectation. So it's usually within people in your precinct.
Okay. I'm seeing some questions here about the documents you need. We've answered that question multiple times already. So I recommend you go to the recording or you go to the website, nypdrecruit.com, where you'll see what you need. Height. Is height a disadvantage?
No, I'm 5'3", and you know, sometimes you gotta hold your own. I'm a little biased again. I feel like taller people can get away with more stuff out on the street, but I'm 5'3", and there's a lot of people that are shorter than me too, and they're able to do the job.
Okay. Are you able to take the test multiple times?
The police officer entrance exam, yes, you can.
That's what I'm assuming
But
the question means.
you this time, like depending on the period, let's say I'm not sure what they mean. So let's say you take the exam now and we have another exam in the fall, you can take that one. And if we have another one in 2022, yes, you can take that one. You can take the test, a different exam multiple times. I don't believe you can take this same, let's say the exam is coming out June 15th and it's going to go on for a couple of days. You cannot go in every day and take it over.
Okay. Yeah, that's what somebody's asking here.
No, but you could take different exam because technically that's considered one exam. It's the same exam.
Okay.
So once you sign up, that's it.
Do you have any openings for intelligence research specialists? That's very specific. So I'm assuming they've heard of that before.
When I was looking through the website, nyc.gov/jobs, I did not see that opening, but you can always check and see if they're hiring those.
Okay.
You can also be a police officer and work in the Intelligence Bureau and do something very similar.
Great. Well, I think I got through all the questions.
NYC, it's NYPD recruit.
NYPD recruit. So there's a typo in there. Yep, nypdrecruit.com, and also on Instagram at nypdrecruit.com. Are they on Twitter, Facebook?
It's just at NYPD
right, at
recruit.
NYPD Recruit. Yes.
Yeah, and on Twitter the same thing, and on Facebook.
Okay, great.
And we're working on that LinkedIn.
Yeah. I guess I don't see any more questions. Like I said, we've repeated a lot of answers. So I recommend you look at the recording, you look at the website. So I think we'll end with this. What will help someone stand out above the crowd? Once you take the test, all of that stuff that's all a great equalizer on some level. Not always, because I know not everyone does well on standardized tests. But once you do all the testing, once you're out there as a police officer, what are some characteristics that make you stand out above the crowd, especially if you're ambitious and it's going to get you moving up?
I think you, as a police officer, already graduated the academy. You go out and it is your work ethic. And this job is like a huge team. And I tell my cop staff, my supervisors, we're all on the same team. Yes, I'm the captain, but we work together and we all make each other look good. It's everybody works together and everybody gets the job done together. So I think you have to remember, you have to be a team player. You have to do what's expected of you. Yes, if you are asked to walk outside on a foot post on a rainy day, it might happen, but this is what you signed up for. I think anytime I had to do anything that I was like, oh, it's 100 degrees outside, I'm like, this is what I signed up for. And remind yourself of that. But it's like you said before, networking, speaking to people, being able to think outside the box or on just, I don't want to say spontaneous, but when you're working outside and you have to, not everything is, okay, rule 1, 2, 3, and 4 and follow these steps. You have to be able to speak to people, especially outside on patrol. There you go. Think on your feet. But that's it. If you're able to speak to people, you can always bring something that starts up here and bring it down to this level where you can speak to someone else and they see you as a human, you see them as a human, and you have that mutual respect for each other. So have respect for other people, because you don't know whose parent or whose daughter or son that is. You just have to think everyone's special, and that's how you treat them. And you'll get respect from people outside as much as you would from your peers.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention. I hope this was beneficial to all of you. Your questions were amazing. Keep an eye out for our future events. Megan, if you can put our event calendar in the chat, We will continue to have activities like this. We had an event last week, Diverse Careers in Law Enforcement. If you're still on the fence, if it's NYPD, FBI, we had an air marshal. So Megan can share the YouTube playlist, and the presentation was there. It was really wonderful. Today's presentation will be also it's already being recorded. We do have events on cybersecurity also within law enforcement. So, I invite you to continue to come to our events. I know you can be anywhere right now for an hour, and we really are very appreciative that you chose to spend that time with us. Gloricel,
Thank you
gracias.
for having me.
This was amazing. I can't believe how much I learned. I didn't know any of this. So
Thank you.
this helps me. No, but it helps. Now that I know these things, I can help students who maybe missed this and have some questions. Now I know where to send students and maybe some young alums. So I appreciate the education as well. So
And
everyone have a wonderful night. Be safe. Take care of yourselves. I can't wait to see you all back on campus one day soon in the near future. And please stay well. And we thank you on behalf of the Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you so much for sharing this evening with us. Have a great one.
thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.